Hi friends, I have a little story time for you guys today. I'm going to be sharing my first trip ever. Now, objectively speaking, I would say I had a pretty psychedelic experience when I was around 13 with cannabis, but that's not what we're going to be speaking of today, even though to me, I had never had an altered state of consciousness up until that point, not even drinking or anything. Um, and so it was very psychedelic and almost, hallucinatory in nature, which later I came to realize that I am very sensitive to substances. And I'm also extremely visual, which is, largely why I'm an artist and why I make visionary art, because I get incredible visuals, very divine, beautiful images in my mind, pretty easily, which is something I'm very grateful for. And it allows me to create a lot of inspiring artworks that I feel inspired by, and, hopefully others do too. But my first experience with a true psychedelic was at age 16 with LSD. Now, I know this is very controversial in nature. That is far too young for the vast majority of people, and by no means do I recommend any person that age really to work with it, but that's what happened to me. So I do want to say that at that point in my life, I had been already lucid dreaming pretty intensely and astral projecting pretty intensely since I was around 12. So around, I think 12, I started lucid dreaming, and about 13, I started astral projecting. So I was pretty used to seeing some pretty crazy stuff. Like, I'd be in my sleep, I would just exit my body and just explore realms and worlds, and it was incredibly magical and fascinating, to say the least. But it got me really interested in exploring consciousness, which is why I started, consuming cannabis at such a young age, because I was so interested in exploring consciousness. So by then I was already exploring it in that way, working with that plant medicine. And I also already meditated pretty regularly by the time I was 16. I had a stable meditation practice. I had dabbled with it a few times in middle school, but by freshman year of high school, I was meditating pretty consistently. And I was reading a lot of books on spirituality and philosophy, a lot of books on Buddhism, on Hinduism. I was reading Be Here Now and the Tao Te Ching, and, all these incredible texts. So I would say I actually, in my opinion, had a pretty good head on my shoulders for this experience, which is, I would say, maybe a lot of other, 16-year-olds were interested in other subjects, but by then I was extremely interested in having these spiritual experiences and grounding them through meditation, and I was prepared to integrate it. I had done my research on what to expect, the potential, safety stuff about it, all that I was pretty informed about. So at that point, I had already kind of made up my mind that I wanted to try it, and it was something I wanted to explore. But the opportunity presented itself through my older brother. So basically, he had worked with LSD and had just finished a journey, and I had heard about his experiences also prior to that, and had heard from other friends, and of course not just hearing from peers, but doing some pretty concrete research besides that. But one day he shows up. He had just finished a trip of his own, and he looks at me. He's like, haha, you want a trip, Huli? And I'm like, sure. And he like hands it to me. He hands me a tab. And I would say probably a lot of people would have not taken that very seriously and been like, oh, whatever, let's just, have a good time. But I knew exactly what I was getting into, and I was like, okay, this is something I am prepared for and ready for. And I was at home in my room. I don't remember where my parents were at. They were good parents, by the way. They were great parents. So I was just, pretty set in my ways of exploring consciousness. And they were not informed by any means that I was about to do this. And I ended up taking it, and it was pretty late at night, which was the only part that I guess was kind of hard, because I ended up doing basically an all-nighter. Obviously, you can't really, at least most people have a really hard time sleeping when going through such an intense journey. But I ended up taking the tab and spent the whole time basically in my room, other than, going to the restroom, but basically the whole time in my room. And yeah, I ended up meditating and feeling everything that came up. And I was pretty nervous at first, of course, because it was my first journey, and I was basically by myself, because at that point my brother had just finished his journey. He just went and fell asleep. So he was asleep. My parents were most likely, I think they were asleep, or I don't know if they were somewhere else. I don't remember that part. This was, well over a decade ago. I'm 29 now. So anyways, I was in my room, and it was divine. I don't know how else to explain it other than I was listening to music, and it felt like that music was exactly for that very moment. And I was dancing in my room, and I started painting, and I painted my first, I would say, like, psychedelic artwork, which I'll have to find and share it with you guys sometime. It's not the most like beautiful artwork, but to me it was very special, because it was very abstract, and I ended up writing all these words, like all these like phrases that felt very important in that moment. That now when I look back at it seems kind of silly. It was just like, just be, it is, things like that. And like, I remember one of the things it says was like, it feels like the sun is coming out of me. Like, it was like, I felt like a bright light just shining out of my chest. And I had a very special vision that stands out from that journey, where I was like dancing in my room, and I started painting, and I painted this tree all over my arm, like where my veins were. It like was the roots, and I just painted trees all over my arms. And I was just dancing with paint, on my arms, and it looked cool. It was a cool moment. And just listening, I think, to like, at the time I was listening to probably MGMT and the Beatles and Ravi Shankar or something like that. And I close my eyes, and I see a bright white light, which, later I explored more, I would call source. And I saw all humans holding hands made out of the same light, like in a huge circle, like massive circle. I mean, there's like billions of us, and connected through the navel to this like huge light. I later made an artwork of it, even though, the scale was kind of off, and it's kind of hard to portray, something so massive as like this like massive ball of light, like kind of like, larger than the sun, with like all humans kind of and beings holding hand in hand around it, but I particularly felt it. I was connected through like my abdominal, but it was extremely blissful and beautiful and insightful. And I would say that journey further propelled me to want to explore consciousness more deeply, to take my meditation more seriously, to explore creating artworks about these experiences. And Yeah, it led me to where I am today, where now I am a visionary artist and continue to make artworks, not always from psychedelics, but from mystical experiences. And yeah, very dedicated to meditation and to seeking enlightenment and liberation and peace, internal peace in this life, and sharing that with others. So that was a huge catalyst of where I am today. And yeah, that's a little bit about my story. So thank you so much for listening. I'd love to hear what your first journey was like. If you've had one, feel free to share in the comments. And lots of love to all of you.